Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Monte and Wolf Show. He's Wolf. I'm dGon. We're a step closer to changing the name of the show. All right, that comment is out of the way. Wolf, how are you, man?
I'm good. I'm also just enjoying reading people confused, even though you've explained it a lot as to why we're still Monte Wolf. Yeah, it's you guys will get used to it. We're gonna change the name eventually. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's coming soon. Comments. Last week, most important comments were about your cat analogy, and you had 0 detractors and only supporters. It's in his name. His name's Gato. Gato Sway Zero says that's actually 2 on the nose. I would change a cat analogy to be the same situation with a feisty cat, but you decide I'm a bet anyways. You get cut a couple times, but that cat will get its chin scratches, which equates to winning the series. And then Slim Rida says Wolf's cat analogy is 100% correct, and real men love cats. dGon, you fraud. I am deathly allergic to cats, but aren't you too? Aren't you allergic to cats?
No, I'm not. My wife is, but I'm not.
Oh,
but
yeah.
You handled it pretty well when you came over to my house. I've got 4 cats, so cat allergies for different people are like obviously at different levels of severity. You told me yours was pretty severe, but maybe you just held it really well when you were at my house. But you did well. You didn't seem like you were dying.
It's one of the things where I hate when people have a specific issue, like they're on a diet or some shit like that, and it forces everyone else to like work around it. The only one that I don't mind doing that is cats. And I did tell you beforehand I'm allergic to cats, and I feel like you or your wife cleaned up beforehand, and then I think I got like allergy medicine beforehand, and that helps a ton. But if they scratch me, it welts up. It's like a welt.
Oh yeah, that's the worst. So. Careful about that because it'll leave like a raised line on your skin, and you can get welts and stuff. It's nasty. But anyway, I'm glad you guys like the cat analogy because cats they're gonna get you. They're faster than you. They might be smarter than you, and they definitely have claws that you don't have. So watch out.
First mention of, I guess, your biggest fan here, Mr. Light. He had a good point. He had a couple of good points last week.
What did he say this time?
We were talking about the most integral players on a team, right? And you brought up Viper. Like we would react the same if Viper was out of the team because he's such a core part of it. Viper is most definitely not the most integral piece to Hanwha Life Esports, you iron analysts. That's Peanut and Zeka. They just let anyone cast professional games these days.
Well, that was I remember that comment because that was one of those comments where I realized that the Light actually watches the show because he made a specific comment about like what we said. Because oftentimes he just says things that lead me to believe he didn't watch the show at all. So I'm glad he actually was paying attention. I would like for him to take a look at some of the stats we pulled up yesterday for Viper's damage percentage for his team and kill participation, and maybe he'll think differently about what we said about Viper, but I'm not going to go into it too deep. But Viper pretty important as we have learned, as watchers of yesterday's series were reminded.
Yeah, he was. Let's get into it because we're going to be getting into all of the Hanwha Life Esports success. Mainly because it came at the cost of someone else's failure. Yes, let's get into the big topic. T1! One of the comments was, T1's absolutely destroyed Nongshim in that 2-0 win. That was a tune-up, I guess, for the match. We go back to the bracket. No one threw the match. No one tried to go in through the 6th place window. That was Nongshim, and we got the most anticipated match of the tournament, Hanwha Life Esports T1, a single elimination, best of 5, went all 5 games. Who won the trade? Was it Doran? Was it Zeus? Which world championship mid laner? You go up and down that roster. The only one you're a little interested in, seeing without a lot of history is Smashy. Would he be able to stand up to the pressure? And in the end, we got ourselves a very entertaining series. Hanwha Life Esports get the victory, knock out T1. As soon as they started losing that game 5, I went outside the studio just to see because it was packed. It was packed in Lol Park, outside of Lol Park, in the lobby. And I went outside in the lobby to see all the T1 fans were gone. Like the game wasn't even over. All the T1 fans had left. It was just Hanwha Life Esports fans like huddled up and cheering and stuff. And it hurt. It was hurting, man.
Yeah, and that game was one of the closer games in the series. Actually, Game 5. That was the Draven game,
Yep.
where like they tried to set Smash up for success, but they kind of got caught in draft. For those of you guys who don't remember, this was the game where they did the Skarner Kalista trade, but they left Renata up. So taking Draven instead of Renata meant that Renata went over, even though they could have waited and denied the Renata and gone Renata Draven themselves, which can be a strong duo, which I think was a big draft mistake for T1. And they ended up getting like completely owned by Smash in one of those team fights where the Renata ult berserked him and he almost killed Keria. And also Owner was having a tough time playing Skarner because he was playing into Talia. And Zayas played a great Olaf game as well against his former team. That was really fun to watch, which actually drew bans, in fact, in yesterday's series against GenG. I think Hanwha really solidified themselves in this series, and the series we'll talk about a little bit later against GenG, as a pretty solid drafting team in Fearless. My biggest takeaways from this series, obviously the number one is like, we got to change the format. Like, holy shit, this shouldn't be happening. Like we've talked about this a lot on this show, obviously, and even directly on the LCK broadcast, but like Hanwha Life and T1 shouldn't have matched up in this way, even though like Elder seeding is supposed to be better because they were the stronger group. Ultimately, like this lineup shouldn't have this clash shouldn't have happened in a single elimination round where they fight against each other. It just doesn't make sense. When KT versus Nongshim happened because KT ended up being the higher seed there. Nongshim came in 6 in Elder, but they were like put up in the upper part, and they could have just reversed that and it would have made a lot more sense. I just don't think Riot expected the groups to turn out this way, and T1 and Hanwha being in the same group was very funny in general because of the drama, etc. And this is the first time they match up against each other, so it did feel like there was a lot of tension coming into this series. But anyway, that's takeaway number one. Like, this shouldn't have happened. I think T1 fans sometimes like are a little bit overzealous about things they're mad about and upset about, and sometimes they're like yelling at Coma, or they're sending trucks, or they're mad at Riot. I feel like this is one of those situations where, based on the fact that we knew the format was like this, you got to win to win. It's like it's a qualifier tournament, frankly. Like, this tournament is just a first stand qualifier, and it proves like what your roster is capable of, etc., etc. Like, they could have just won and it would have been fine, right? I get that. But with all the volatility of Fearless and stuff like that, I feel like T1 fans could be a little bit mad that this format was kind of BS in terms of how this worked out. Because Hanwha Life may go on to win the whole tournament. We don't know. And the fact that T1 doesn't get a second chance, whereas the other top teams that we know are the top teams, like it's very obvious, do get that second chance, is a little bit weird. So now that we put that aside, I thought T1 would be good in Fearless Draft. They have Faker.
Yeah.
The champion pool is enormous, right? You have Owner, who's pretty versatile, and Keria on this team, right? Keria, holy shit, this guy can play anything. But then when you watched how he did play many things, like LeBlanc, for example, it didn't spark joy to us, dGon. Like, we didn't really feel like T1 ever had drafts that were super cohesive. And Doran ended up being kind of the weak link. Like, he was playing Akali weirdly. He played the Aurelia. And I walked out of this series feeling like, man, I was wrong. Like, T1 aren't good when the champion pools get thinned out. Like, Faker's champion pool in the past has been so massive, right? He's been known for this. Although when you look at his recent years and his injury and stuff like that, it shrank massively. Like, you know, back in like 2023, we're like, man, he can only play Azir. When we were going through those playoffs, we're like, I guess he can only play Azir. And then it expanded back out again as he recovered from his injury. He went to Worlds, right, and won 2 Worlds in a row. And like, his performances were good. His champion pools were big enough to win an international tournament, obviously the biggest of the entire year. But in this series, I feel like they couldn't come up with cohesive drafts. They couldn't actually figure out how to beat what was actually real drafting from Hanwha Life in some of these games. And they got pretty fortunate in some of the other weird games as well that they did end up winning. But I was just kind of disappointed with T1's drafting, and it doesn't matter, by the way, because we're not going to see Fearless for the rest of the year. But like, if we had Fearless going to LCK, I'd be like, uh-oh, this could be a problem. We got a lot to work on. But it probably won't matter because we're just going to go to normal drafting after this.
It's very interesting how Fearless drafting has put a spotlight on the coaches and their artistry. You know, you have like these abstract painters that, you know, cook a little bit too much. You have people that just do like a stenciled line, and then you have great pieces of art. I would say the GenG draft against Hanwha Life Esports Game 4. We'll get to that one. That one, it comes together, you know, it's like a great movie, you know, it's like, all right, we'll put the middle first, and then we'll put the ending second, and then we'll put the beginning last, and then it'll tie together perfectly. Like, I think what we learned about T1's system is that they figure out what style of play is the best in the meta, and then can find creative picks around that. And unlike in Fearless, where you have the best style of play with the parts that are there, and then with the parts that are missing, it might be a completely different style of play. And so you have to use suboptimal champions for a better like strategy. So for example, we were talking about it yesterday. If you want to play a front to back, where's Sion? Where's Malphite? Where are these like Cho'Gath? Where are these clear like tank top, and then piece around that there? Like, you don't have to play Gangplank if you don't want to play Gangplank. You don't have to play Kennen. You know, like there are ways around it that you're using a suboptimal champions to make a more optimal strategy. The sum of your parts is better. And it feels like in this series specifically, T1 failed to do that. Like, you just look at game 3, they're like, oh shit, Mel's up. We got to play Mel. All right. And they pick it so early, and there weren't many things to reflect. Maybe the arrow, and you could saw Faker's like unfamiliarity with it because he gets first blood and then gives it right back, reflecting into the chains of Zeka. Like, it was not. I would say, like, it's so much on the players to be like, okay, figure out how this works. The coaches have to do that in that short amount of time in draft, because you can come in with different types of strategies, but then you've got to piece it together in like that final 60 seconds when you lock in the last champion.
Also, playing Irelia into this comp is really tricky as well. And Doran is like, we've mentioned it so many times over the years, but like, Doran is the guy where you're like, oh, okay, he picked Gnar, I'll get him with Irelia. Like, we're gonna farm Zeus in the top lane. It's gonna be easy, which we can be quite successful. We have Irelia, Sejuani. Dorian has never really been very successful at that type of play style. When it's the opposite way around, when Zeus is trying to do that to him and he's playing something that's a little bit more weak side oriented, like the Gragas that he's famed for, that's when Doran wins those. But like, when he's the aggressor, he usually kind of falls over and doesn't have success. And I think T1 figured out very quickly that Doran isn't Zeus, and they probably shouldn't put him on the Irelia pick. He's had some up and down stats. You can look it up on Games Legends or something like that if you guys are curious. But he has some up and down stats on the pick for sure. I think Faker's lack of mastery on Mel is fine. Like, that's okay because it's a fairly simple champion. But it just didn't feel like they came up with anything real in that draft. Like, the LeBlanc felt like Carrie is just like, well, this is kind of a throwaway game. I guess I'll just pick this. And Zeka can't play it for the rest of this year. It wasn't good. It didn't make any sense. There was no setup for Smash's misfortune, like, at all. There's just no setup in this. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, the Pantheon was a masterclass from Hanwha. It's great into Misfortune, great into LeBlanc, to be honest, as well. And it ended up being super high impact for Delight, who's having a great playoffs. In T1, like, they played this series close. They outclutched a lot of moments. I think everyone just pointed their fingers at Smash for some reason when they lost, like, because of the controversy, Guma versus Smash, whatever. And everyone's like, see, I guess he was bad. He played fine. Let's just look at some of his stats in the winning games. Like, he played really well. But the drafts really hindered his ability to play a lot of these situations. I do agree that he had a fairly weak performance individually as well in this series. But, like, he looked fine in the wins. And in the losses, like, on the MF game, like, how do you play that out? On the Draven game, you're playing low-range Draven into fucking Olaf who's running
everything.
at you. You've got Talia in there. You're super low range. Like, good luck, man. And they tried to set up a pick comp for Draven. That's why they played the Zoe, because if we kill somebody, then we get the cash in, and he got it. But he still couldn't front to back the team fights because Olaf just runs at you really fast, as it turns out.
Yeah, Smash has had the most success on this roster when T1 clearly made him the priority. They set him up, he knocked it down. He was brilliant that way, but it felt like they didn't really do that, including in game 1 when they picked him Kai'Sa, and you're thinking, okay, Smash Kai'Sa, I remember these plays that he had. He like did that 1v1 against Chovy in the bot side, like blue buff river to close the game out. But then you have Carry on Pyke, who is going to try to lane bully early and didn't get that there, and then is going to roam. He's going to play away from the Kai'Sa and try to make plays, and then Carrier had a bad game in that Pyke. He didn't really land any bones skewers, so they didn't play to him there, and it felt like he was a passenger for the rest of them because they didn't really play toward him until things started working out, right? Like Delight on the Elise, when he was on Karma, right? It was Caitlyn Karma. And that is more like, okay, let's protect our baby boy Smash, and our Wundu kid will lead us to victory. And that is what happened. So it felt like the criticism there was unfair. But let's do this mind exercise a little bit here, Wolf.
Yeah.
How would things change if Gumo was in this type of series? Would it have changed?
I don't know if it would have changed necessarily all that much. I think Guma might have played a little bit more confidently, for example, on the Draven than Smash did. Because I think Smash obviously is very young, very, I don't want to say nervous. Like, he hasn't really been nervous, but you can see when he walks off stage. We've talked about this before. He almost looks like he's shaking, even on the games where he popped off and carried, because there's so much pressure on this guy right now. Because of he took Guma's spot, and Smash is just like, look, I'm a young player. I want to get paid to play League of Legends for T1. Like, I want to wear the red jersey. I want acclaim. You know, I want to be a successful person. I'm starting off my career right now. I don't actually need any of this controversy shit. But guess what? He's got it. Like, you know, that's the weight of the T1 jersey. It's like very heavy. You know. You put that on, and like it comes with all sorts of responsibilities you didn't necessarily ask for when you were like, you know what, Mom, I think I'm going to be a pro gamer. I think I'm going to give this a shot. I am going to delay school a little bit. I'm going to do this. But you end up getting that T1 jersey. You automatically get tons of fame, but you also get to all the criticism and all that comes with it. What I'm trying to say is, I think in this game 5, Smash played more nervously than usual, and it's scary because you're playing Draven. You don't want to lose your stacks. And you're playing into an incredibly tough comp to play Draven into because you're super short range, and all the things we've already talked about. You're playing into a Mumu, you're playing into the Talia. The Kalista damage is real. You have to be aware of that. If you get caught by something, Kalista will just, you know, put some sticks in you and press E, and then you die. So there's so many things he has to worry about there. Maybe Guma would have played that one more confidently. I think Smash played the Caitlyn very well in the win that they had, and that's a big Guma pick, obviously. And I don't think if you put Viper on Misfortune in that T1 draft with the LeBlanc, like, Viper could have pulled it off, to be honest. Like, I just don't feel like Guma would have made things that different. And I'm just looking through all the drafts, like, especially the losses for T1, and I'm like, I don't think Guma gets it done better. Because they didn't play through other parts of the map. Like, it wasn't like the playing through Zeus playstyle. If it was Zeus instead of Doran on Aurelia and Doran on Gnar, I think maybe that one would have gone. It could have gone a little bit differently in terms of the top matchup. But I think people are overreacting a lot about Smash had a bad series. Guma should be back in. Ultimately, the coaching staff and scrims will decide what happens in the future before we go into LCK. Excuse me. Because, like, we have a long time before that. They won't be at first stand. They can spend a ton of time scrimming all the other top teams that aren't at first stand. Because remember, only one LCK team is going. So, like, whoever loses the finals is going to be looking to scrim and prep. And T1 has a lot of opportunities to continue to grow. Yep. I think right now, Smash will probably be on the starting lineup. But we don't know that for sure. And maybe because T1 has access to comms, and, like, whether Smash was, like, choking in comms or whether he was really nervous, like, that we can't see, but they can very visibly see based on what he's saying or what he's not saying or what he's doing in game, because they have everything. Like, the coaching staff has all that we don't have. They may pull him if they're like, oh man, this guy's not ready to play the LCK yet, like, full time. He's gonna maybe burn out. We don't know.
We don't know, but I do think in game 5 on the Draven, there were a couple of times where he could have cashed out a little bit earlier, use the flash aggressively, pick up the kill, get the money.
Sure.
He would have been flashless, but I'm just remembering a couple times in the bot lane where it was like, that's a kill. Like you flash, you ult, he's dead. You execute. You remember?
We were yelling, flash on him and kill him. Like I was yelling, just ult that guy, like so many times, and then he finally got the cash in on that river fight,
which was great.
Dragon, and we were like, okay, got it finally. Like I was just like, ult him, man, like kill him, and then he did. So it worked out, but
then he didn't do anything with it.
He couldn't team fight.
If you get it earlier, especially, you know, if the stacks are all the same, you get it earlier, you start to put pressure on Hanwha Life Esports. That's the mental battle of playing against a Draven. They're like, shit, he cashed in. We got to start pressing a little bit. Yeah, so that's T1. Afterwards, Becker, the GM of T1, went out and put out a video that eventually got deleted.
Bizarre. Yeah, that was quite bizarre.
I appreciate the transparency, right? But
so I actually, I'll be honest with you guys, I saw the announcement that the video was coming after the video had come out. Like a bunch of people sent that to me, like the tweet. So I was like, oh, I can't wait to watch the video. And like I speak Korean well enough to where I can understand most of like the things he would have talked about in the video. So like for me, I'm like, I'm not waiting for subs or anything. And then I went to click on the link and it was like, the video's gone now. So I like just messaged everyone who was messaging me the video, like, where's the video? I had people on my Discord talking about it. So I was like, hey, where's the vid? And everyone's like, yeah, it's gone now. It was only up for 2 hours or something. And I think it was like, that's just how how they planned to do that. They weren't going to leave up the VOD for some reason. But like, don't say you're going to make a statement in 30 minutes and then make it at midnight. I think it was at like midnight or like 11 p.m. when they did that, Korean time. And then just delete it 2 hours later, so like no one can wake up the next morning and be like, "Oh, I'm cool. I was waiting for the update. It felt like they were like, we acknowledged the fans, but like at the time when no one's paying attention, and then it's gone, so we didn't really do it. That was very bizarre to me. And then later I saw it came out on Reddit, and like there was some truncated translation, but I don't like to judge these types of videos based on like fan translations. I want to see it with my own eyes, but I just wasn't able to do that, so I'm very annoyed about that. And then there was a lot of fan backlash about like whether Smash is going to stream or not, and like whether he's going to be on their branded stuff or not, because he's such a late call up. And they acknowledged that like he started scrimming very late and stuff like that. At least that's what the fan translation says, because I don't always trust those. But anyway, and then there was a lot of fan discussion about like, is he a what's the word for this, like entertainment type player? Like T1, remember T1 got all that backlash years ago where they're like, oh, are they an entertainment company or are they an esports company? They're making the players do too many ads, and so now they suck, and like that kind of thing. But then people were mad that like Smash like wasn't designated as like a streamer, or like he's not one of the K-pop boys, basically. Like he's not one of them, but like
he doesn't get a letter. He doesn't get a letter.
Yeah, it was very weird. It was very weird, and I think like T1 need to be better about their communication. I want to see T1 not be afraid of their fans, because I feel like right now the org is so afraid of their fans that it's hindering their ability to communicate, which is why everyone's like, why'd you announce this so late about Smash? Because they were scared of what people were going to say, because you guys are going to go crazy about it. But also they still have to just accept that if they're going to make a crazy move, people are going to go crazy, and like give them a heads up. Like the fans, if they told the fans earlier, then they wouldn't have been mad. But if you don't care if the fans are mad, you can just not tell them and be like, we're a sports team. But then later, like, apologizing and being weird, I'm like, you gotta, like, pick one, T1. You can't just, like, let the fans...
Wolf, we're trending in the right direction. This is the right direction of, they made a move. Like, after week one, all of us were like, Guma didn't look that good. I don't know if it was like, we bench Guma for Smash. It was, Guma didn't look that good. I vividly remember that. And then they were like, we're benching Smash. We're like, holy shit. They're doing it, and then they don't know how to do it, but they made the decision to do it. And now Becker comes back, and T1 comes back, and they address all the things. Like they see all these learning lessons. More frustrating is if they did it and then said nothing afterwards. But they're like, look, this is what happened with scrims. This is when we made the request to change the roster. We put him in week 2 because it's lower risk, and then they announced it for strategic reasons, but we realized we should do it earlier because it caused a lot of confusion. Like, these are all the learning lessons that all of us like came to a conclusion to, but now they've admitted it and acknowledge it, and I feel like that's showing. Okay, The letters are great, but we're a team. The only acronym that matters is the T and the 1 and the F.
Yeah. Look,
We're
I
not
think
putting in P in there. It's not going to be
I saw
POSKD Poskada.
when you said
All right.
POS, I got scared. Anyway, I think like with the translation, this is why I get weird about the translation, because I want to see the original video. Maybe, by the way, tell me in the comments if it's like out there somebody, or if somebody like recorded it and re-uploaded it somewhere, like if it's out, or like if T1 re-uploaded it or something. Please let me know, because I could not find it based on the tweet and the announcement and all that stuff. But like, we announced it late for strategic reasons. That seems like such a like summary and not like a real statement, because if Becker just says we did it for strategic reasons, you have to explain that further, because like the rosters get told to the enemy team. It's not like they showed up to LoL Park. Like, people don't know this, by the way, and I feel like Monte and I have talked about this like fucking a million times. But like, when teams submit their rosters, both teams get the rosters. You know that at the moment when the rosters are submitted. It's not like you go to LoL Park and like there's like a Hanwha Life coach who's like looking around like, Joe, have I seen Guma today? Like, maybe they're playing. I saw Smash. Holy shit, they're playing Smash today. Yeah, we gotta change our drafts. Like, they already know they're playing Smash. Like, it's not like they show up to LoL Park and they're like, we had to hide this. We couldn't announce this because then Hanwha would find out, or whatever team it was the first time they played. I don't remember which team it was that they played against first with Smash off the top of my head. But like, it wasn't like that. That's not how that works. Like, hiding it from the public doesn't actually give you a strategic advantage. It's just a weird thing. I'm sure that's not what he meant. But like, I think when those types of translations come out, it confuses people, because they're like, oh, so maybe it's because they didn't want the other team to know, but that's just not. That's a weird thing. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I love that. T1 has, by the way, I just want to put this out there. You go to LoL Park, we have a cafeteria where people eat, and there's like basically like a bunch of condiments and stuff like that. And everyone brings their food in. And it's a big gathering area. It's not like as big as like the Hogwarts like dining hall or something like that, but it's like pretty large. There's large tables, and T1 take up with their staff like a fourth of it when they come in, because they have so many people that come and handle things. They have such a robust and like strong.
For comparison's sake, Bro has like, I think 4 people. Like, it's 4 staff members. T1 rolls up with like 12, 16 people. It's kind of nuts.
Sometimes more, and then they have like their whole like content team that's running around with cameras filming the players all the time and stuff like that. They have so many people, and like I think that their team is run better than like almost any esports team in the world, but they still have like a PR issue. And I see these people on a daily basis. Sometimes they say hi to me, they're very nice. I'm not trying to like shit on T1 as an org or anything like that when I say this, but I feel like with some sensitive stuff that's come up recently, like the Doran Zayas thing, and this Guma thing now, I feel like if they had just been like, we're gonna tell our story, we're gonna let you know, and been transparent, people would have been mad, but they would have understood. And now, like, it felt like T1 was too scared to say anything, and then like the fans have kind of been ahead of them, like in the cat and mouse game on this one. They're kind of trying to catch up. I would like to see T1 just like grab the PR by the horns and be like, this is what we're doing. It's going to be controversial. Please understand, it's not permanent. Like, have just Coma do like a 2-minute video statement and post it on Twitter and be like, this may shock you guys. Like, Papa Smithy does stuff like this, for FlyQuest, where he's like, we're going to make a controversial decision I'm telling you guys about. Like, stuff like that. Like, just do that. And everybody loves Coma, and they'll be like, oh, that's weird. I don't know about this, but maybe you'll trust. If you do it later, it feels like you're covering something up. It just, like, please work on this T1, because you guys do like basically 99.99% of things like really well as an org. Like, it's the most famous esports org of all time for a reason. But I would like to see some more communication like about that stuff. I think fans are right to be upset about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, one more thing is the jersey, the tomato jersey, right? Like, that was another one that like just kind of PR wise slipped out. I think they could have just owned it, because look, now we're embracing the tomato. Like, I saw a fan dress up with the tomato, like they made the fan sign as the shape of the tomato and just like poke their head in. Like, it was endearing, but you just got to own it. You got to own it. All right, that was a lot about T1 as they're out. They have roster decisions and moves to make in the future. We'll get into Hanwha Life in their second series in just a little bit. But before we do, it's time to remind you about one of our friends over of the show, and it's our friends at Upside. One of the smartest apps you can have on your phone in 2025 is Upside. Upside gives you the power to earn more on the stuff you buy all the time, like tomatoes. Whether you're filling up your gas tank, going out to eat, or shopping for groceries, the Upside app lets you earn cash back on every purchase, and Upside users are making as much as $280 a year for all the purchases you already do. The free Upside app gets you cash back on daily essentials like gas, groceries, and dining. And to get started, download the free Upside app and use the code Monte to get an extra 25 cents back for every gallon on your first tank of gas. Next, then claim any offer for whatever you're buying on Upside. Then pay as usual with a credit card or debit card. Follow the steps in the app and get paid. And you can earn an average of 8% on restaurant and grocery purchases. And the best part, you can even stack your Upside cash back on top of your credit card and debit card rewards. Upside users are earning hundreds of dollars a day. That's probably why they have a 4.8 star rating on the App Store. So head on over to the free Upside app and use the promo code Monty to get an extra 25% back for every gallon on your first tank of gas. That's an extra 25% back on every gallon of your first tank of gas using the promo code Monty. Thanks to our friends over at Upside.
Yeah, get it done. Get your money back.
Yeah, like, gas is going up. Plus, gas tanks are getting bigger.
Groceries going
cash
up.
in.
Yeah, it's man. Every time I visit the States, I'm always like, wow, like there's a lot of driving, there's a lot of gas that needs to be bought. It's very different living in Seoul, where we just live in a big city, and you could take the bus anywhere. But you live in America, you're gonna be driving a lot, you're gonna be buying gas. So why not take the opportunity to save a little money on it?
All right, let's focus to the other series that happened, just because it's less about. I mean, I guess we're celebrating Nongshim top 4 better than T1, baby. Also,
Yeah.
KT, like, what the fuck? Excuse my language. It was just
okay.
a masterclass in disaster of draft here by KT, and I feel like Nongshim won the game in draft. There's one glaring thing we need to hit.
I was very well, I mean, there's a few glaring things for me. Like, Wei was super hyped up coming into this tournament, I think, by a lot of people, because we watched him in challengers with hype, no pun intended, and he has just really not been great so far. And I think Duckdom has also been pretty rough. And we've talked about it a ton, obviously, like, why didn't they just get hype and away? We don't know, like, what went down there. We never will necessarily. Maybe it'll get leaked someday, or maybe KT will say something when they, like, take him back and he's no longer on loan. But, like, I think Duckdom is, for some reason, the one who's getting all of the heat. And I feel like that's somewhat warranted, but I feel like if you're playing with Wei and he's having these performances, like, how can Duckdom actually play well? I think it's both of them, but they're just like a hole in the bottom of the map. Like, it's practically, like, unplayable with the performances we're seeing from these guys. Like, I'm talking like is Diablo better than Duckdom? Like, we're not sure. Like, it's really rough. Like, it's really bad. And BDD has had to carry this team every single time. When you get to best of fives, especially in Fearless Draft, like, you can't. It just won't work that way, though. You can't just be a one-man team and everyone plays their BDD and he pops off. And BDD, like, he and crew made some really weird decisions, and, like, there was that team fight in game 1, if you guys remember back to the series, where, like, BDD kind of got caught by Lehens and then just engaged into 3 people. And if BDD is playing like that because he's trying to make hero plays while his team has really, it seems like, no idea what's even going on, like it wasn't a good play by BDD, but he's like, I think this is the most I can get out of my death right now because I have to do everything myself, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I feel like this roster is destined to be mediocre if they can't figure out how to fix the bottom lane. It's just destined to be mediocre. Is it going to be, like, the worst team in the LCK? Probably not. Like, I think they'll be top 8 at worst, but they need to figure it out because it's never going to be a top 4 contender at its current state with how they're playing.
Well, that's because they lack the star power. Like, I think you have BDD and Cuz. Perfect has been a good role player and does his job. He's the guy that goes to work, doesn't talk to anyone, and then goes home. That's perfect. And honestly, you needed something stable there with last year's star-studded roster. And then Wei just has looked lost. There has been no way for Wei. And I think that whole series felt like you're just blue balled for the BDD highlight play. Whether it was like, okay, we've got a whole bunch of highlight shuffles on Azir. That never came to fruition. Okay, he's on R. He's going to make some play. That never came to fruition. And then they're like, all right, we don't know what the fuck to do. We don't want to lose push in mid. So here, we'll throw the Zeri mid. Well, let's cook. Let's cook in the draft. Even though you could definitely play Tristana mid. He's definitely played Tristana mid. Let's put Zeri in mid. That didn't quite work out either. And I think it's that seems indicative of what this team is going to be. It's going to be live by BDD, die by the BDD, and it's troubling because there is no quick fix. Only if there was an 80 carry who's not playing right now, maybe a world champion that also wears the color red, so he wouldn't have to change too much of his wardrobe. Possibly. I don't know. Like you're only the second biggest.
Who are you talking about?
You're only the second biggest telecom company in the world, possibly paying, your rival. But we've seen worse. We've seen Yankees become Red Sox.
Okay. I was like, wait. Where are you going with this? I'm like, they can't get Guma. He's under contract. Come on, he's not going to sell Guma. They're not going to sell Guma to KT.
What if Guma's like, I know the secrets. We're going to unbury some bodies unless you let me out of contract jail. Like, I don't know, dude. Like,
I mean, dGon's trying to stir some shit, but I'm here for it. It's fun. I just don't think there's any world in which like T1 would ever give up one of their famous idol players to their rival telecom company. Because
sure, what if they're like, okay, take Smash, Guma, you're back in.
Even if, all right, just from like a thought experiment, even if they wanted to sell Guma, I don't think KT can afford him either. Like, I'm with you in that it would be really cool because Guma is bench warming to just betray T1 and go to KT roster. But like we saw Mata go to KT and stuff like that, or to T1 and stuff like that. Like it does happen.
Yeah.
I don't. I think KT is doomed. Like I've seen a lot of people be like, maybe they should call up somebody from Challengers. You can't. It's Paddock who's in Challengers for them right now, if I'm not mistaken, and Peter. Like, is Peter better than Wei? I don't know. Maybe. Right now, I'm kind of like, yeah. I right now I'm kind of like maybe, but I think you can't make a change like that, or your whole team loses confidence. Like, oh man, if I have a bad few weeks, like they'll just pull somebody up, and then like your whole team just falls apart that way. And Paddock he's not on Duckdom's level. Like we saw Paddock play in the LCK, and there were a few games. He had a few good moments, but for the most part, like he was a bottom of the barrel, like 80 carry for the LCK, and Duckdom has had more success in the past. Some of these drafts, some of these team fights are so bad for KT that like Duckdom can't do anything. And people are like, look at his damage after the game. I'm like, look at the team fight though. He's Tristana, he's low range, he can't get in there at this early Grubs fight. They have no prio, and yet they're hard forcing it, and then he can't shoot anybody, or he just goes in and dies. So like you can't play that out. He had some really rough calls, like all inning, for example, in a few of those moments on Tristana and just losing because he's too far behind and stuff like that. But I think as KT, you've got to just keep this roster together. And I don't even want to talk about KT that much more anymore because it's a little bit depressing. Let's put the focus on Nongshim, who actually have figured out that they can play around the hens. They can listen to their young. They can basically just like win these crazy fights that it looks like Lens is caught, and you're like, uh-oh. But then everybody piles in, and then they end up winning these pretty clean team fights. that worked really well against KT. And Nongshim beat some pretty weak teams, right, on their way into this this match. Like they beat Bro. Bro was not a weak team going into play-ins, but like they looked weak in that play-ins match, to be honest. So like I know you're gonna be like, what Bros? No, they were good, but they weren't good in that series. So like Nongshim beat a underperforming Bro, right? Got bodied by T1, wasn't even close. Almost went to 5 against DRX, and then crushed KT, and then played against Dplus. And they tried to do some of their shenanigans against Dplus, where like Lehends is like, I'm going in, everybody come with me. Dplus is like, no, I've seen this move before, and actually we're better grouped, and we're on the other side of a choke point. You can't force this fight, and like their strategy kind of fell flat on its face against Dplus. Dplus a better drafting team than them, but I do think Nongshim have this bizarre confidence to them, and their drafting is not that bad. If GenG really like have a bad series, I could see them losing to Nongshim. I'm not going to predict it. I'm definitely not. But like the fact that Nongshim is kind of interesting and kind of relevant is something I didn't really have on my expectations for this tournament. And moving into LCK, it's kind of exciting. Even if Nongshim just bomb out and GenG 3-0s them, they're a relevant, interesting team where when you see Nongshim versus X in the matchup for the day, you don't like groan and go, oh, okay, well, it's going to be another one-sided one. I guess we're going home early. You're kind of like, oh, I wonder what could happen. Like, what's Lehends' plan here? They might lose, but it'll be fun. Like, you know, I like that. The fact that Nongshim has just been, I don't want to say like it's a trap game team, but like you really have to be careful when you play against this team. Like they are so wild and unpredictable that anything could happen. And the fact that they walk out of this tournament saying they got top 4 is a product of the format, to be honest. The social media manager has been funny as hell as well with some of this stuff. But like,
yeah,
it's true. They got top 4. Are they really a top 4 team in the LCK? We all know the answer is no. Are they a top 5 team in the LCK? I think so.
Maybe.
I think so. I think so. And if they beat GenG, I'll rescind my statement. I'll say, you know what? I guess maybe they are a top 4 team. I just don't see it happening. But I like that we can have a conversation about Nongshim being a playoff team, and that they have cool drafts, and that Lehends is back a little bit, and maybe he's too back sometimes. But you know what I mean. Kingen having some of his incredible form games, like his Rumble game where he's like 1v2ing people. That kind of stuff, you love to see it.
We have 8 good teams. We have 8 good teams in the LCK that can beat anyone on any given day, and BNK, FearX, and KT. I've thrown KT all the way down there. Not that KT's like average rank is down there, but their bottom is down there. Their top is maybe.
It's debatable.
They're
like
like
whether
9th to 5th, maybe 6th.
It's debatable whether like KT or DRX is like the second team. But yeah, we were talking about this other day. We're like, wow, does LCK have 8 interesting and good teams? That it's been a while since we've had that. Maybe it's 7 actually. Maybe it's just 7. Maybe it is KT's down there with BNK and DRX. But I mean, DRX could be interesting sometimes. DNF could be interesting sometimes. It's debatable. But like, I feel like the fact that Nongshim and Bro are in there is quite fun. That's really where I'm getting at.
I like throwing DRX in there because it they're winning despite Rich. Like, I feel like they play the matches. I wouldn't say that he's a negative, but he's definitely not adding. I think it's 5v4, and it's crazy to watch.
I mean, UCal is like he's BDD light, like he's the same thing.
He's Fisher light. He had the comeback glow up, kind of make the plays. He is who he is, and willing to play a little bit more than usual. But yeah, I think going back to Nongshim, they figured out an identity that works with them. I think they've cooked a little bit too much with the type of, if you're gonna play carry top, like please play like a normal carry top. I don't want to see fucking Silas anymore on Kingen. I don't want to see Aurora anymore on Kingen. Like, just let him carry with Rumble or something. Let him carry with Camille. Like I think
his
that's him. Otherwise, yeah, but wasn't that
was
like
a bad draft for Dplus though?
Yeah, no, that was the fun draft. He also went like AD. It was the split pushing Kennen. So like that's not hard carry. You know, if you're gonna carry, like when I think he takes over a game, it's Aatrox, it's Rumble, or he's like chatting on Renekton or like Gragas or something. And like that's put him on those. Put him on those. Don't cook too hard. And that's why I've liked what Nongshim has achieved in this Fearless. They went from not knowing how these players function to then being like, doesn't matter what champs you're doing, listen to your young, to being like, okay, kind of matters what champs we're doing. And then, okay, it matters what champs you're doing, and you have to listen to your young. And then it was like, okay, we cooked too much again. So in the GenG series, listen to your young and let Fisher be the main damage dealer. Let Gideon be a facilitator. Let Kingen be a bruiser. Unless you're going to outsmart them and put them on Aatrox in a draft, that works. The end.
I mean, I feel like I think there's a lot of truth in what you're saying, and I think Kingen, they're trusting him a lot because he's had some big pop off performances on some of these picks where they're like, oh damn, your Rumble is really good. Like we can trust you. Let's put him on GP in this draft, and it's like, yeah, but they have a global on the other side, and you're just going to get run around the map, and then they try to overcommit to a few plays and just get caught. I think Nongshim were a little bit exposed in that Dplus series. I think Dplus looked great, obviously, but I feel like Nongshim just looked like they were mechanically 2 levels behind, and it's like you can't even play the macro game or anything like that because like Showmaker's getting solo kills in the mid lane. You know what I mean? Like it's when you see a solo kill in the mid matchup, it usually means in underperformance of one player or a mistake by one player. Like I know everyone loves to go like, oh, I remember back to the Faker LeBlanc days, and like it was different back then. I feel like to how it is now. Now most of the time, like you should get lane advantages if you outplay the other person, but like getting a kill, solo kill is almost like it means the other person is not respecting you and like not giving up farm and greeting, and like Fisher shouldn't have died in that situation. Showmaker played it incredibly well, by the way. I'm just saying like. You could see there's a huge gap between these two mids, even though Fisher is like my most improved mid, and so, and I've been like really championing that he's not bad anymore because he was real bad last year. I think you watch some of the stuff and it's like, okay, well, Nongshim is clearly the fake top 4 team because of the format, you know, like they looked really exposed in this one. You see like with a weak draft from Dplus and like a good game plan from Nongshim and an early lead, like of course they can still beat any team if they have a massive advantage in draft and in this type of situation. Sure, there's still quite a strong team, but compared to our 3 big remaining, they're just not. They're not on the same level, unfortunately. Like Hanwha, GenG, and Dplus are all a tier above them. So I just don't. It would be so fun if they went to the finals, but I just don't. I don't think they can. Even if they outdraft in some of the games, I just don't think that they have it in them to do it yet. Maybe we'll see like what they can continue to develop in LCK.
I do appreciate though that we were asked yesterday. They're like, hey, in case Nongshim win, how do we phrase their championship victory? Because they've won in Challenger before. And I was like, why are we planning for this? But okay, like we call it like tier 1 competition victory for the organization or something like that. But yeah, let's dive into the Dplus and GenG and how they looked, because we've seen the pain of being the buy team in KT. In GenG's case, they ended up losing as well. It looked like Hanwha Life had figured out whatever problems they had in the group stage and got to ramp on up. But Dplus, you know, let's just hammer that one home real quick. The only game they lost was a Happy Gaming draft game where aiming built wrong, looked terrible on Ziggs, and got our first ever 0 out of 5-star rating from Ox, who is a Ziggs connoisseur. Like this man loves Ziggs and loves build path Ziggs and loves satchel usages. So we on the broadcast use them there. Other than that, Dplus looked pretty solid, especially in their mid jungle 2v2.
Yeah, no, I mean the team is good, like absolutely, and like it was a pretty good reminder, I think, to people. Like a lot of people were questioning, oh, is the Baron group just so weak that's why Dplus was undefeated? They beat T1 early on in the season before T1 figured out like who their AD carry is, and like moving into this, I think there was some like 3-2 predictors of like, ooh, what if Dplus is like not as good as we thought? And like Dplus has burned us a lot in the past, where they start off the beginning of the year like really good, and you're like, holy shit, they're back, and then you fast forward and it's like, oh, they're in 4th, 5th place, and we don't trust them, kind of situation. Yeah. So I think a lot of people were apprehensive, and then boom, they show up, they look super clean, they completely outclass Nongshim. And it was like a reality check for Nongshim as well. Like, oh, we beat some great teams. We're on a roll here. Like, we're relevant. We're top 4. And it's like, well, you beat KT and DRX. Let's be honest, Nongshim. Like, let's slow your roll for a second. That was kind of how it felt for me. We got both the reality check for Nongshim, and then also for Dplus. It's like, no, they're actually a strong team. Like, 100%. And their drafting is still fucking good. Minus that one weird one that everybody makes mistakes. And so, like, let's talk about, like, moving forward a little bit for them. We'll talk about GenG Hanwha in a second, but I like moving into that Hanwha matchup because Hanwha did win. Spoilers. I feel like Dplus just have a draft edge over them, and I feel like Dplus is maybe not as good at all aspects of the game as Hanwha Life. Like, and they're not as good at playing around AD carry as hard. Like, even though they used to do that, like they figured out their identity to kind of play through Showmaker, and the Lucid Showmaker duo has been so incredibly good. I'm not sure if Showmaker will get the same sort of massive advantages over Zeka, who has a pretty good champion pool right now in this meta. But I think I can't predict against Dplus here because of their drafting and because of the traps they've been able to set. And I would love personally to see a world where Dplus are back on top, because it's been several years. Like, since 2021, we haven't had this. And Dplus that year were also so close to so many of these big titles, MSI, Worlds, and dominated LCK in a way that people who have only watched recently, GenG did. Like, they dominated like that. Like, they were that much the top unbeatable team in 2021. Yeah. So I would love to see them come back, because it feels like almost nostalgia for me, because that's where I started, was in the Damwon era, and then we quickly moved out of it, and I'm hoping that we can get it back, because I would just love seeing a new champion. We got Hanwha Life last time. That was not T1 or GenG, and especially recently not GenG, so that was cool for me. And maybe now we get a Dplus championship. That would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, especially when we think about who is representing the LCK and Korean League of Legends, the way that they have been so malleable and creative with their drafts, but without being, again, I use that artistry thing. They're being like abstract, and you look at it and you're like, I don't get it. Like, every time you look at a Dplus draft, you're like, man, this came together so well, except the Wukong Zillion, and I think they tried to fight at like level 2. It was so bad. It was so fucking bad. Other than that, it was okay. And again, in that series, this is when a mark of a team is good. That series, Dplus and Nongshim, here's the scores: 17-6, 23-6, 28-3 was the one that they lost, and 22-6. Like, this series, I think maybe you said it. I was like, this series sucked. It was boring to watch. They were just stomps. I think it was Brendan that said that. Valdez that said that. And I like seeing that from my top teams. Like, fucking destroy them and make it boring, especially when it's like, the 4th place team that's not even supposed to be 4th place.
Yeah, when
make them feel like he's fucking 7th.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Put him back down.
You got to do that. Like, I agree. Like, I feel like the games from a quality perspective were not, like, entertainment quality was definitely not there, because you're just like watching and be like, oh god, please go next. Like, I'm so over this. But like, that's what it should have been if Dplus is actually a relevant top team.
100%.
And that was the checkup. Like, this is our little, like, we're checking in. Are you still good? Was it like, are you fraudulent? Was it just like a fluke that you got, that the other teams were bad and like T1 didn't have their shit together at the time? If it was Dplus versus T1, probably would have been a lot closer. Probably would have been a lot messier. Probably would have been a lot crazier. But Nongshim got that spot. They had they had team selection. They chose Nongshim, obviously. And they showed why they were the obvious choice. All right, let's move on. This episode's been pretty long already. I want to talk about GenG versus Hanwha, which happened yesterday.
Get into
it. There were some weird games in this series. I feel like it was not as high quality as it going to game 5 might make people think, where they see the score and they're like, must have been super sick, like back and forth, really close games. most games were incredibly one-sided, with the exception of game 2, where GenG almost, which should have been one-sided, but GenG threw really hard.
It was incredibly one-sided until like 21 minutes.
And then they threw a little bit, and then they barely won. And that was cool. I feel like if they had lost that game, it's a 3-0 probably. Because Han would just bounce into the third game, which they did win anyways, but they would have crushed it even harder because like they had the extra mental edge. Ruler did not look great in this series.
No, it did not.
And Duro is new. Yeah, Duro is new, right? Like he's not technically a rookie because he played last year, and he's played a lot of Challenger games, and he was one of the better supports in Challengers. Like I thought it was a good pickup for GenG if they're trying to go budget. Like I'm not criticizing like Duro being in this roster, but he looks a little bit new and uncomfortable. And if you compare his somewhat more quiet, less calmy, and less like he's not communicating that much, and he's less of a hard shot caller like the Hens. Like you could feel that change in the roster because even Canyon and Chovy aren't necessarily moving around the map as well as they had in the past. And so Ruler, I think, is also a little bit uncomfortable because he's playing with somebody who's not a veteran, and he's played with like big veterans for a lot of his career, obviously, for most of his career. And so for him to have this support that's like not necessarily on the same page as him makes it tougher. But he's made some really greedy calls. He's made some really greedy individual plays. And like this is Ruler, like he does this. And then they drafted him Misfortune, and I think this is the game that everyone gave Ruler the most flack for, to be honest. And he did like 4,000 damage that game, and Duro did like 3,700. It was one of those games. And he spent a lot of the game just in the top lane split pushing because the draft didn't make any sense, and he wasn't really set up for success, and they fell behind. And then like he's playing Misfortune, he's like, well, there's no setup for my R button. Cannon can maybe sleep people. The problem is if Cannon gets close enough to sleep people, he just gets popped like a balloon and he just gets one shot because everyone is so fed.
Azir, like the range, it was Jin, Jax goes all in. Like there was no way to set it up.
Yeah, there's just no way. It was a bad draft. And I think Ruler actually, for me, like that was the game everyone was like really, criticizing him for. And for me, I'm like, that was the most forgivable game because it felt really unplayable. And like Ruler split pushing and getting that top inner turret was like the best he was gonna get. Like is what it felt like for me in that game. I'm like, his team probably shouldn't be fighting while he's up there. But also like I think maybe that was the best opportunity he was going to get to do anything in that game, and then maybe they could have like not fought, and then like he groups and there's something there. He did eventually almost get 3 items that game, but damn, that was not a game. Most of the games in the series were non-games. And like in GenG's wins too, they were pretty dominant. Like they had the one neck-breaking draft, right? We'll talk about that because where they tricked Zeka into they tricked Zeka into playing Renekton mid, and then Chovy's like, no, it's support Camille, and I'm playing Smolder GG. Like when we saw the Smolder lock in, I was like, wait, is it Ashe support for a second? Like for a second, I was like, oh, it's just Smolder going bot. It's gonna be Ashe support. This is crazy because I was already thinking in my head like the hype of like, oh, Fiora versus Camille. This is so sick. Fearless, by the way. And then Chovy just pushed it mid, and I'm like, oh, it's support Camille. GG. Like I didn't even see it coming necessarily. Like I didn't see it coming necessarily at the beginning, but when I saw Smolder is laning into Renekton, I just saw like I at that moment I saw Hanwha Life's Nexus exploding. Like I was like, it's over. Like I'm done. I don't even watch this game. And then they played it well, and Chovy abused Smolder, and Ruler's Ashe is really good, and they had a lot of setup for him. So
Zeus did his damnedest on that Fiora to win the game. He ended up 10-4, and we were saying in the space that like if this is a summer split Hanwha Life Esports team, and Zeus is more comfortable with his teammates and being like, hey, I'm split pushing, I'm not TPing back, we will not win a team fight, this is how we win. I think he could do that, but I think he felt like I got to be a good teammate. I'm the fed one. I need to help defend. Blah blah blah. He TP'd back and like got popped. It happened twice. I think once in the bottom river for like a Drake fight, and then once like back in the base that ended the game. But
yeah, where he killed Canyon, and that didn't matter.
Like I think that we just learned a lot more about Hanwha Life. I think we learned a lot more about how Hanwha Life could be good in their losses and how shaky GenG was in their wins, despite getting those early leads. It was it was less about, hey, you don't know how to get a lead. You don't know how to. It was more about, hey, this is a team that is relearning how to win, which is just very weird to say about GenG, especially with Chovy, Canyon, Keen, and Ruler on the team. It's weird.
Yeah. I think like when I look at this draft, especially the Smolder draft, right, in isolation, I look at it and go, wow, Coach Kim's got some cool ideas here. It may have been like Chovy's like, hold on, there's an angle or something like that, or maybe this was their plan all along, was to kind of dupe them. I feel like in this situation, even with Ambessa mid, like you don't have to hard force putting Renekton mid. I feel like putting Renekton mid is always going to be a risk when one of your soul laners can be flex support. Like we literally saw Beryl do this just the other day, and we've seen it so many times. Camille support, like it's not even, it's somewhat fringe, but it's not like, it's not singed support levels of rare, you know.
Yeah.
And it felt like it could have been flex. I didn't necessarily see it coming, but I'm also not doing the draft, and I'm thinking about casting, and I'm thinking about matchups, and I'm, you know, I'm a broadcaster at this moment in time. And it was definitely a flex I didn't see coming, but I think Hanwha probably learned a lot from that moment and will be a little bit safer around these types of things in the future, because I thought their drafts were very robust and overall better than GenG's in general during the series. They just got caught that one time. Just like Dplus, you know, we talked about earlier, like they were by far the better drafting team, but they did have that one where they cooked a little bit too much, and it ended up, you know, the enemy team just out, like Nongshim was like, nah, we're calling you out on this one. This one's not going to work.
Yeah.
So I think both these teams look pretty good. It's just a little bit concerning that GenG's bottom lane isn't consistent. And so I just don't think you can fix that by the time this tournament is over. I don't think it's not salvageable. I think GenG will definitely be a top team, and maybe will even like be an MSI representative or something like that. But like I think we'll see them potentially at the top of the stands. They could even be number one when we're halfway through the new LCK format, if they can fix this problem. And I think it's definitely a fixable issue. It's just going to take a lot of scrimming and a lot of like hard conversations, because this is a team filled with the superstars and Duro, you know, like Keen was the legend of Afrika, right? He was the guy, the franchise player, like one of the best top laners on a bad team. Canyon, Chovy, I just have to say the names, and the Ruler's coming back, but was a huge legend of the LCK and of GenG, and had pretty decent results over in the LPL. So he's still like a top player legend, but like massive salary, right? Like these are players who need to be willing to like listen to Coach Kim when Coach Kim goes, hey, you've been kind of messing this up. How can we fix this? Like, what are you guys thinking? And like actually be honest with each other and stuff. That doesn't always happen in Western teams. I feel like this is even harder than in Korea. But in Korea, like with this many egos, I imagine it's probably an uncomfortable and challenging conversation.
In Europe, I think it's the most common, actually. I would say in North American teams, absolutely. I think the way that people attack these types of confrontations is different. In Europe, it's always, you fucked up here. And like I think although it's very aggressive, it's consistent. In Korea, I don't know how the players would react to that. And yeah, so I think it's unique to see the type of different coaching style and job our reigning LCK Coach of the Year is going to have to do to get these types of players on the same page. Not only for, because you're putting focus on First Stand and the LCK Cup. I'm just saying in general. Like I don't know how they're going to do with this type of disappointment and failure. Like that is, it's a unique group.
When
Yeah.
GenG first made this super team, I had concerns about this similar type of issue. And then obviously when Pays was on the roster, it felt like, oh, okay, this makes sense because the AD carry is the new guy, and that's the most like malleable role for that type of thing, and it felt super perfect. Like, yeah, okay, you got all the egos, but like they're gonna set up Pays for success, and he's just gonna do what they say, and he's an AD carry, so he doesn't have to be in control. He just needs to follow up. You know what I mean? And that worked out so well for them. And now that they've swapped it up, like there were a lot of people who were, Pays is a passenger, Pays isn't that good. Even Monte, he can't defend himself right now because he's not on the show, but he'll watch this and he'll be like, but you know, Got you, Monty. But Monty was also one of those guys who's like Pays and Passenger. And I think there's a lot of truth to how Pays played. Like, he was not a Smash type. He was not a Viper type. You know, and oftentimes even like Def, for example, would make a little bit more proactive, like aggressive 80 carry, like pop off plays than Pays did. But Pays had an incredible team he could play around, and he positioned well, and he clicked on people, and he did damage. That's what 80 carries do, right? And when you see Ruler getting caught repeatedly, though, in these types of big best of fives, you're like, I don't know, maybe Pays, maybe we kind of miss the passenger. Maybe what we need is a passenger on this team filled with like insane carry players, Keen, Canyon, Jovi. Maybe that like maybe you need a Guma type, you know, because that's the kind of same type of archetype. Like Pays and Guma are really similar playstyle. Ruler is more like Smash, you know, but to make those high impact plays and try to maximize damage and to step forward and try to push that wave and then get hit by a Xinjiao and then, oh my god, we almost threw the game. Like, that's the type of player Ruler is. He's like, I'm going to get every little inch out of the gold I have in my inventory. Like, my damage per gold is going to be off the charts. I'm always trying to push the envelope, but sometimes you push too far. And
you end up only doing 4,000
yeah.
damage in a game, less damage than the opposing support.
I think Ruler's going to have to reel it in a little bit. Or like Keen or Chovy's going to have to change how they play. Yeah. Like, this team is not going to be able to play like they played with Pays because Ruler is not Pays. So they have to figure it out.
I like the idea of that GenG are trying to play to 100% of all their capabilities, which is higher than what was possible with Pays. I like that idea. It is just very risky and difficult to do that. Or if they scale back, like you said, who is the one that scales back? All right. Futures. Nongshim versus GenG. We've now talked about how wounded GenG is. Wolf, is the upset happening? Will it
I don't
happen?
think so. I don't think.
Okay.
I just think similarly to how like Fisher got outclassed by Showmaker, I think he gets outclassed by Chovy as well. Even though Chovy's not having his best split, I think it's good enough to probably win out there. Even though I love my boy Fisher, like I'm suddenly a fan, but I just don't see if GenG have a really bad day and some really bad drafting, because Fearless gets wonky. We've been talking about it a lot. Like, the level of gameplay definitely has gone down. Maybe you end up dropping a game or two because Nongshim outclassed you, or Lehens. He knows GenG so well. He's got the angle. You know, that could happen.
I would love that, dude. That would be so good. And then it would blow up GenG's like season.
If GenG lose here, it would be catastrophic. Like,
that is catastrophic.
I think Chronicler was the one who said this. But like somebody on our team said this. Like, GenG's goal is not to look good at first stand and not win the tournament and like just be like, well, it was a decent start. We'll see. GenG's long-term goal is like, obviously, like, if they don't win first stand, that's rough. But like, the long-term goal is to look like a good team throughout the year and continue to get sponsors and look like an elite team like they always have been. And then like get Chovy his first Worlds. Like, that's the goal, is to actually win the World Championship and be the best team in the world. Like, this is not an org that settles for like, I won a lot of LCK titles, I'm cool with top 3. But right now, a lot is going to have to change for them to be able to accomplish that. And losing to Nongshim, I feel like, really, when you have these players, again, like I mentioned Chovy's face on the broadcast, like I haven't seen Chovy look on a face like the one I saw from Chovy in a while, where he just looks like, I don't know, man. I feel like we're not going to win this one, you know? Like, he just looked like out of sorts. If you lose to Nongshim, I mean, it is going to be a rough getting ready for LCK. Like, it's going to be, Coach Kim is going to have to crack the whip. People are going to be annoyed. People are going to be tired. People are going to be like, that's too much scrims, and you're telling me too much what to do. I'm Chovy! Shut up! You know, like, it's, I just imagine, like, so much tension it is going to happen in this roster when push comes to shove, no matter what. Like, even if they make the finals and lose the finals, so like, if they lose to Nongshim, it can't happen, dGon. Like, it's really bad for the team if that happens.
Okay. I was just checking.
I don't think Nongshim can do it either. So
let's move to the other series, the exciting one. Both firing at their top cylinders. I'm angling it that way. If they're firing at top cylinders, Dplus and their draft ocean as far as the eye can see, Any water owned by Dplus. Hanwha Life Esports, they now have multiple levers to play through again with Viper. They have Carry Zeus performances, who looked great on the Gnar. He looked great on the Fiora. The only player that I still feel like is trying to like level up is Peanut, who's doing things even with bad score performances. But the light taking over games, he was player of the match. Who you got in that one?
I think I'm gonna have to lean Dplus. But I think I'm gonna go like 3-2. Like I think Dplus will win it in a longer series. It'll go back and forth, and then they'll like end up winning game 5 because they have the better read on the 40 ban champions moving into the series or moving into that game kind of situation. One thing I think Hanwha really has over Dplus is Peanut's flexibility, because he hasn't had the best hands moments, and like there's been some inconsistencies with him, but I feel like what he has over Lucid is a ton of experience, and he's way more flexible than Lucid is in these types of drafts. Like you said, they could play through Zeus. Zeus's carry performance has been great. His Olaf was amazing. For example, I wouldn't even necessarily call Olaf a carry, but it ended up being kind of that type of game. You can play Anivia, so it gets really tricky to draft around Hanwha compared to some of the other teams. Like drafting on Nongshim is sometimes it's pretty face up. You're just like, no Shen, no Elise, by the way. Like, good try, Lance, but it's not going to happen. It gets a little bit tougher against a team like Hanwha. And Peanut can play for Viper, he can play for Zaka, and he can play for Zeus. I feel like Lucid has mostly just played for Showmaker, and that's kind of been it. And Shio is still pretty young and still pretty new, and I don't think that like playing through Shio is a bad idea, but they've shown that they're pretty averse to it right now, because playing through Showmaker, who's arguably our best performing mid, I would say probably our best performing mid of the whole tournament so far, is just the way to do it. But maybe Peanut finds angles elsewhere and kind of runs circles around Lucid because he's just the smartest jungler in the LCK right now. Like, Owner is a close second, I would say, and Cannon is just not looking like himself at the moment, to be frank. So like I feel like he's not in the conversation for best jungler at the moment. But I think that's the scariest thing for Dplus is Peanut, and like what he can do to get these multiple win cons online. Whereas Dplus have been really cool drafting and really fun stuff, but like the win con has always been Showmaker. And so if you can figure out how to shut that down, Dplus need to show some more versatility. When Showmaker played Zillion, it's hard to play around Zillion, as a win con. Play through, let's get Zillion fed, like look at how that game turned out. You know what I mean? That's what worries me for Dplus.
Yeah. I think I side with you with the Dplus 3-2. I haven't been great at predicting, though. So we'll see. It's going to be a great series. That's what I predict. A great series, and we've got the cream of the crop. This is what I love at the end of a season, end of a tournament. We're done. We're done. And it's now all about the best teams left in there. And if Nongshim can get something creative, I'll be very happy with that too. So all right, y'all. That does it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for watching, commenting. Let us know what you think about T1 getting knocked out early. I'm sure you guys would do that regardless if I asked. Who you think the most improved player is? Is it Fisher? Is it not? And who you got for representing the LCK at first stand and winning the first ever LCK Cup. Until then, we'll see you next time.